pleasure and privilege of introducing Alan Bignall. Alan is the president and CEO of ReconRobotics. He founded the company in mid-2006 together with the investors and the University of Minnesota. Alan led the company through its organization, fundraising, establishment of global distribution capability, and the manufacture and launch of all of its products. He has extensive leadership experience with large multinational companies, as well as entrepreneurial ventures. Alan also serves on the board of Relief Neuropathy Systems, LLC, a company he also founded, CSMG International, a Chicago-based sports management company, the advisory board of the Norris Institute at the University of St. Thomas, and is the entrepreneur in residence at the University of St. Thomas's Schultz School of Entrepreneurship and the Opus College of Business. Please welcome Alan Bignall.
No self-respecting robot guy will come without robots. So I'll put them together a bit as I introduce myself. So Alan Bignall. And I won't have the microphone, but do I need it? Or is everybody okay? We're good? I have to be careful what I'm saying. My filter's turned on because they're recording it, so I guess I will be a little bit careful. I was going to do a PowerPoint thing, and I decided that playing with stuff is a lot better than just looking at stuff. So we'll get a couple of these robots turned on, and I'll pass them around, and you guys can just throw them around and play with them and drive them, and you'll see what our customers, which is law enforcement and military all over the world, 32 countries, are doing with this particular robot that we have created. So my background, I was born and raised in the UK. I moved to Canada in my mid-20s, then to the US, to Minnesota in the late 70s. I have all sorts of different careers, big companies and little companies. The last 12 years has all been in the entrepreneurial space, founding and creating and selling and building jobs and trying to work on companies that make a difference in society. So things that help. And so that's what turns me on when I get up in the morning. What can I do to help? And so I had the luxury of a long career in big corporations, which then enabled me to go now to do a lot of littles. And I love littles because it's a lot of energy and a lot of change and a lot of challenge, and so I get excited about that. I have, I'm going to pass out some of these too. There's about half a dozen per table. If you could do that, it'd be great. Thank you. I think there are 5 tables. Robots. It's a great question I ask almost everybody when I talk about robots. I say to everybody, what is a robot? And nobody will give you the same answer. You know, someone will go down the Schwarzenegger route, you know, Skynet is aware and it's the end and we've seen the movie and we don't like robots. Others will go down the Roomba route, where the robot is cleaning my floors every day at home, and that's great because I don't have to. Others will go down the Da Vinci route, where a robot's doing prostate surgery, so I don't have to have a doctor's shaky hand inside me. All of that all those things are starting to happen. And the movies tend to have, I don't think there's one for everybody, so there's like half a dozen per table, so I apologize. I bought like 30, and I think we have more than 30 folks. What I handed out there is a description of the company and then a couple of examples of how the robot's been used by police departments. Bloomington does have a robot, by the way. And
this is not him.
No, I know him and I don't know him, so. But yeah, it's used by 17, 20 police departments in Minnesota right now, so it's a very well-known device. So robots have been around a long time in the manufacturing world. They're fastened to the floor and they do the same repetitive thing, and yeah, it's cheaper, faster, better than human beings do it. What we're talking about, the industry I play in, are called service robots. Things that do things for people. It's all dull, dirty, dangerous stuff. That's what robots that I get involved in do. All the dull, dirty, dangerous stuff that human beings do. There's two cultural views of robotics. One that sort of emanates out of Asia, and one that emanates out of America. So in the US, we all sit around thinking this stuff because we tend to be a bit gloomy and doomy sometimes. Robots are gonna take jobs away and they kill people. That's what robots do when you're in America, right? Because that's the way it's always positioned. Oh, if I have a robot that can sweep floors every night in all these buildings, all the people that currently go in and sweep floors are all gonna lose their job. That's the end of the world, right? So that's the American philosophy of robotics in general. Another great example of that is that, a fighter jet might cost, I don't know what they cost, $1 billion a piece, something like that. You buy a lot of robots for $1 billion, by the way. So the studies will tell you that about 80% of that cost is to simply protect the little bag of flesh that sits in the front seat. And if you didn't have to protect that little bag of flesh that sits in there trying to drive it, then you'd save 80% of the cost of every jet fighter in the country, right? So why not? Well, guess what? It means we don't need pilots who sit in the front of airplanes anymore. Whoa, wait a minute. That's a career. There's an ego associated with being a fighter pilot. Those are the cultural things they're going to address with robotics over the decades. You've seen it because of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. You've seen it starting to happen because unmanned aerial vehicles now, right? And the pilots sit in Arizona flying those all the way over in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they go home at night and they're with their kids, but they still fly the planes. But you don't have to move them over there. They're living at home. You're not doing all that logistical stuff, right? So it's changing the whole game in that space. But you can imagine the negatives that come with that if you're not careful. So we could save the cost of a hospital. So other studies have said that 80% of the cost of a hospital is the cost of having people move stuff around inside the hospital, right? I'm taking this patient or this piece of paper or this drug or this or I'm doing that, right? So 80% of the cost of running a hospital is people carrying stuff around that really could be carried around by some form of robotic device. Is that going to change the game? FedEx. All the FedEx trucks driving around here, right? Delivering stuff every day. You really don't need anybody driving those trucks anymore. And you certainly don't need anybody delivering packages in buildings because a robot can back out of a vehicle and come and deliver a package. It's quite easy. So what's going to happen with that? McDonald's. Every McDonald's restaurant doesn't need any human beings in it anymore, right? Now, are they going to make that shift quickly? No, but robots can cook burgers, they can flip, they can take money, they can deliver food out the drive-through window, they can do all that stuff. I know, are you acting like Americans and being scared by all this? Or are you saying, oh, good, right? Then we can, now, because what you got to think about is those robots have to be made by somebody. They have to be maintained by people. They actually don't do it all on their own. They do need a little bit of help. And so it creates an awful lot of high-paying jobs, does robotics. And so I spend a lot of time talking about the politics of this, because if America doesn't get its head out of the sand on robotics, it will be a consumer of robotics, not a maker of robotics. And Asia will be a maker of robotics. And where all the jobs go with robotics. We have to get on the robotics bandwagon and stop fighting the fact that that stuff is about to happen. You get what I'm saying, right? I mean, it is happening. It's not by chance that cars are safer when we're not driving them, but they're driving themselves. So insurance rates will go down if you get a self-drive car, and you'll pay extra to drive it yourself, right? So sometimes, though, people tend to think, oh, I'm safer driving than any robot will be. Not what the facts would likely say. And the robot doesn't get tired, and it doesn't need coffee, and it doesn't need to stop for bathrooms and all of those sorts of things. It doesn't reach around and play with the kids while they're driving. And if you have a drink or two too many, then it doesn't care because it's driving. And that's happening. Within a decade, you will all have a choice to buy a car that drives itself. Because they're all out there already. How many of you have a car that can reverse park itself? It's just a robot. You press the button, it takes over. So this is a little robot. What is a robot? Well, this thing does. I've got two of them here, so I'll just fire them both up, and then I'll pass it around, and you guys can drive it. There's a camera on there, and a microphone, and some other stuff, and it brings back a signal to this device, which controls it. There's a little joystick on here. And you can throw this as long and as hard as you like, and it lands. And then you can steer it around and see what it sees. So I'll pass that around, and everybody can play with that. The joystick is up is forward. That's about as much training as we do with this thing, too, by the way. I'll fire up the other one, and we'll start it this way. So this robot will take multiple drops from 30 feet onto concrete, right? So this is a seriously tough little guy, wherever it is. You have to be careful not to trip over it. And so this is a slightly different model, same idea. We'll throw it over there somewhere. Oh, there we go. And you can't break it. So, well, the trick is to drive it while looking at the screen, not at the robot. So where was I on robots? Oh yeah, the robots are good, right? They're going to be good. Are we going to go through a macroeconomic shift that's going to be a little scary? Yeah, we are. Seriously are. But we could choose to keep our head in the sand and let the other countries do it. South Korea is pouring more money into robotics than any other country in the world. Any other country in the world. And their goal is to be the #1 provider of service robots in the world. So that brings you all the way around to education, right? Oh, the other thing I should say is we now are of all the robotics companies in the world that serve the police and military market, we are #2 in the world. iRobot is #1. That also makes the little vacuum cleaner for the house. And we're #2. So we have over 4,000 of these now out around the world. 800 SWAT teams in the US, or police teams in the US. A couple of thousand with the US military deployed in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all around the world. They're actively used all the time by our special operations guys and gals and all their different things. And like I said, 32 countries. And that's been quite a ride, to say the least. So we get a lot of commentary on that. See, everybody's enjoying it. It's really easy. You just.
What's the cost of it?
Oh, the cost. Nobody told me I'd have questions here. So this one with the funky wheels, which we designed with the special operations community in the US military because it can go over more stuff and it's waterproof. This one with its controller and everything sells for $13,950. And the other one that we're playing around here sells for about $9,500 because it doesn't go over as far. Now, the other one is quieter. This one has the funky wheels because it can climb over more stuff. The other one has smooth wheels. So our FBI colleagues, who are big customers, they buy the one with the quiet wheels so they can sneak up on y'all without you knowing it. Not really. But they tend to do it in buildings. FBI mostly operates in buildings. So you're upside down. The minute you get upside down, if you drive it forwards, which is up, remember, it'll flip itself around. Now, if we turned out all the lights, you'd also see it sees in the absolute darkness. So total darkness, it will see. And so let's get back to robots, which brings us to education, right? So so I occasionally, all around the country, we talk to Rotary groups and others. I was asked the question, do I do it? I don't do it a lot, I'll be honest. Because one of the things we're seeing is Rotary groups are offering the opportunity to buy these for local police departments who are struggling for cash right now. They're hurt. Cities have gone through tough times because these save lives every day. You can imagine if you're a police officer and you're asked to go in, there's a domestic going on, someone said there might be a gun in there. Well, who's going to go? How do I find out? Right? And there's a baby, right? What we think. Or I heard a gunshot. Or what do I do? How do I get in there without risking someone's, you can't just say who's the rookie, who's the smallest, who's whatever. Get in the door first, right? That whole stuff. Yeah, there's all sorts of tactics can be used, but now what happens, this simple little robot changed the game. So now, all their tactics are about how do we insert a robot first to find out what we can find. It totally changed the way those things happen. And the same for the US military. When I'm going down at some narrow street in the middle of Fallujah, a little village, and there are 10, 12-foot walls either side, and I know there's people on the roof. How do I do this? Well, I can throw this on the roof. I can do that sort of thing. Someone's trying to trip me over here. Oh, here we go. Schools. So another passion of mine is then how do we, and I believe it's a passion of your group as well, which is how do we change the education system so we start creating qualified people who can exist in this new society that's coming, which is STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math. All those other social things don't matter anymore, really. They're going to learn those really fast on the internet. That stuff's going to happen like that, right? We have to figure out how to totally change this education system. So, robots can be built by 4-year-olds. No problem. They can program them, they can make it do things, and if you haven't seen it happen at a kindergarten yet, go watch it. Go watch those kids build robots, right? They can do it. Yeah, we're all scared of it because we didn't grow up in that, but those kids can build robots, and they build them because they don't know they can't. They haven't learned the rules yet that they can't do that. You can't program anything because you haven't been to a programming school yet, right? So you can't do it. No, they do it. And then companies like Lego and people like that create the capabilities for younger and younger people to build robots. I spoke to my granddaughter's class. They were asking questions of me that I wasn't asking until I was in my 20s and 30s about stuff. What language are you programming this in? How do you control the one wheel versus the other wheel? Are they independent motors? Right? How do you control the speed given the fact that there's only so much power in the battery? It's like, okay, this is like, A, they're girls, right? And B, they're 6, 7, 8 years old. And it's wonderful to see that stuff. It's wonderful. But we got an awful lot of stuff in the way of that. An awful lot of stuff in the way of that. So we have to start thinking how to change that. We have to, a great quote, I was doing some event over in St. Paul at the Capitol, I don't remember what it was, but the state support, I'll say this because maybe someone will see it on TV, but so the state manages, there are more, for instance, there are more kids hockey teams in Minnesota than there are more robot teams in Minnesota than hockey teams. Yet guess where the state puts most of its money in those two categories? What? Where did that figure out to be the right answer?
You can televise hockey games.
And you think you can't televise robot wars and other stuff? Well, guess who gets the most joy out of televised hockey games for kids? Okay, and what are all we? So why aren't we excited about what the kids are doing not in hockey and football and all? I'm not saying that's not important. My kids were sports kids, I get all that. How do we get them equalized? So I think there's, instead of just saying, you know, STEM is the sort of, we got to pump more money into STEM, yeah. No, we've got to raise it. We've got to equalize that sort of stuff. Right? And there's a great opportunity now. So it would be great if we had the professional robotics league, right? So I could get my $22 million a year for playing robots, right? And get first round draft pick and all of that sort of stuff. But, you know, it might be fun to do that one day, those sort of things.
I think it will happen.
I can tell, it will happen somewhere in the world. The question is, will it happen in the US? And I'm having seen, so I do a lot of international travel with this business because we're in 30-some countries. We have the opportunity to do it now, but we're going backwards.
It will happen when the Congress can work together.
Well,
So you're saying it's not.
that brings us to a different topic, which I'm not going to talk about.
No, that's what it is. Who allocates the money? And
We do.
the Congress does, through Congress, and the Congress can't even agree on whether they should spend $5
Right.
on the education.
Well, it's not just the Congress, it's also the Minnesota State, it's also local cities, it's also, you know, the city of Bloomington. I don't know how many hockey rinks it supports, I have no idea, versus how many hockey teams, how many robot teams it supports. Interesting piece of information, right? But nobody wants to know that stuff. Right? And I'm tend to be provocative about this stuff because I think, you know, I have a passion about changing the game on things. You know,
Can you talk about army, robot army?
Robot Army? Is this the one we're on our side or the other side?
Oh, we have, you know, wars are fought with the army.
Well,
Wars are need people.
I have this theory. Has anybody not played with it yet? Or is everybody? Ooh, there we go. There you go. You can pick it up and play with it first too if you want. So you see it's designed, it's a pound, it weighs a pound. So you can literally, there's a great video of some huge Marine, US Marine, hauling off and throwing this thing. I've never seen it thrown that far before as high. This is an enormous dude, right? And I'm a big guy. This is an enormous dude. And he throws it and I'm thinking, okay. And it lands and bounces up and down the concrete a bit and then he just drives it off. And the quote that you can hear on the video is really nice. Little flowery, but
Cheaper than a dog or a cat, right? I mean, it's a nice pet.
I'll sell you one. You got a credit card?
13 grand?
I think you're gouging 13,000.
Do you know why it's $13,950?
Because you couldn't get 14,150?
It is the cheapest one on the market. So put that in context. We do not take government funding for research, and like all of our competitors, we decided we didn't want to be influenced by the government to do that stuff, so we do all our own R&D. The industry typically is driven by, and guess what? We've taught our country to do that, to rely on grants, right? Which is the federal process. You know, I'm not going to change that world overnight, but so I had a train of thought going there, and I forget what it was now. But
Do they go up and down the stairs? Or do they go
yep,
down?
you throw them.
But, say throw it on the first floor and you need to clear the upstairs.
Then so the tactics they developed was they'd form up at the bottom of the stairs, the stack of police officers. They'd throw it up to the landing. They'd clear the landing. It would then watch the landing to make sure as they were going up as a stack, and then they'd use it to clear that next floor. Otherwise, they'll insert it on the third floor. They'll throw it through an upper floor window and clear it downwards.
There are certainly situations where you couldn't throw it on it.
Absolutely, there are. And then we don't claim to have a product that will do everything. Yeah, there are robots that will climb upstairs, but then they've got to be this big, and you can't throw them, right? So you always, this is a tool. It's not the only tool. That's the other impression that robots in the movies have, right? They can do anything. Just put a new chip in, right? Or something, and it can do everything.
Like My son's in the military, he's a helicopter pilot. And so you were talking about, you know, not the need for the pilot. Which
Unmanned,
would make the mother very happy.
Absolutely.
He would tell you that the military might be slow to that just because they pumped thousands of dollars into him personally to train him. And, you know, for all the training, so he'll say, well, you know, this is that, but they put so much money into my training that to then turn around and replace me with a very expensive robot. So it seems like that in itself might be part of the problem to switching over.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's the same with, look at almost any employment structure which can be affected by robotics, if you think about it. Truck drivers, train drivers, bus drivers. The University of Minnesota had a great project for a self-drive bus around town here. They had a driver on board just in case, but it drove around, no one really knew. Google's car has been driving around for, I think, like 3 years now, accident-free.
And then the next time you land in a commercial aircraft, if it's raining and it's low visibility, or if it happened to be an unusually smooth landing, it was done by...
Guaranteed there's no human being holding on, right?
I remember back, and I'll say the late 70s, early 80s, I think, when they came out with the Spruance class destroyer, I believe was the designation. It was all computerized. They were talking about how advanced it was. And then someone discovered, well, the only problem was when the computers went down, you just had a floating hunk of tin that was defenseless. So in this world where we're all driving remote cars, what happens if, I mean, in your vision, what happens like a big sunspot storm comes up or something, or I don't know, and all of a sudden, all the electronics are dead.
You're dead.
So let's imagine that now, if it happened tomorrow. The electronics are still going to die in your car. Everybody's going to stop dead right there.
Yeah.
And
You could steer, but so, I mean, people are thinking about this type of thing, I'm sure.
sure, absolutely. They're called safety systems, and you'll definitely have safety systems in those things. So some of the rules, we're developing a robot copter right now for indoor use, so we can go upstairs and have a look around and some of that sort of stuff without having to go inside. And the question is, what happens if you lose control? What does it do? And so the idea is if it loses control, it knows it's lost control. It will immediately soft land wherever it is. And it has onboard batteries to be able to do at least that. Right? So there's all sorts of, we're really good at safety systems and those sorts of things. That's the stuff where, as a culture, we've worked hard on, whether it's UL or it's safety or it's, you know, FDA or all those sorts of things. Now, you can say it's a little overbearing in some of those stuff, but it's all about safety. And I think we'll solve the safety problem. What happens if? But if you go through that process of scaring the world about that, then you never get to try it and deal with those issues at the time.
Are there anything like robot labs, like the Fab Labs with MIT that are popping up to help get in the educational world and get kids excited?
There are. In fact, there's beginning to see those all over. I think that the bigger trend though is more the do-it-yourself stuff at home. The kids will be able to buy their own stuff. It doesn't take as technology is evolving, there's a great robot just came on the market which is designed to replace a manufacturing production line worker. It actually looks like a human. It's got arms and legs and moves around. And the way you teach it what to do is you go over and you move its arms around and show it what to do. You actually go in and physically say, pick this up, do this, turn this, do this. It remembers. You say, do that again, it just does it again. But it's got enough sensors on so it remembers where it is. It knows what it's supposed to look for, what shape of thing it's supposed to look for. So I didn't have to build it, or I didn't have to teach it anything. I didn't have to program it. I just had to have it watch me do something, and it did it. I think the Lego robotics stuff is huge because that's starting a whole process where things will happen in homes, not just in labs. I think it's the same I'll go back to the hockey analogy. Dads and moms will spend all this money and time, you know, I got a rink in the backyard, I got this, I got all this stuff going because but I won't spend the money on, you know, the other stuff, so it's a change.
I was just going to ask you more about education for people that are going into robotics. What are some of the paths that they can go?
You mean from a career point of view or from a...
You know, kids that are in high school, you know, there's some of the stuff with STEM and PTLW and different things that are going on. But like, is it then specialized community colleges like some of them that we have here? Is it certain college programs? Is it double E's, MEs? What are they? REs, robot engineers?
Well, they're all double E's or MEs or software engineers. Robot is basically software, mechanical, electrical engineering, all. And we're adding a new context as I talk about this. You've also got to have a cultural and a social engineer because the laws are going to have to change, right? So the first, you know, driverless car, a self-drive car, and I wasn't driving it, it hit someone, whose insurance pays that? I wasn't driving, it wasn't me. I pressed this button, right? Well, then it was the manufacturer. Well, no, you pressed the button. Nope, you know, who, and all that stuff's got to go through the courts and get figured out, because there is no right answer to that, right? And all of those sorts of things. So this is a cultural change as much as anything. And so so there's also a legal career in robotics. There's also you know, all of that sort of stuff too. I mean, it is going to change a lot of things.
Where do you see robotics going in the next couple of years? Particularly, I think when you made a comment about we're going in reverse, I'm going to make an assumption that might have something to do with the vast majority of robots being bought in this country now, at least on the military and government side, are bought with grants. Federal grants. In Bloomington, we've got a robot, Remote Tech, Andros.
Yeah, the big one, right?
It's about $250,000 robot.
Right.
Purchased on grant money.
Yeah.
Grant money is drying up,
Yep.
and you know this, and maybe that's what you meant by going in reverse, but as that federal grant money goes away, the reality is a city such as even Bloomington would have a real hard time buying a $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 robot. What's going to happen when, you know, those grant dollars at the federal level have pretty much dried up? And robotics, what, does it stand still? Are they going to go more in the consumer market, or what do you see?
Yeah, so what I meant by standing still was we're not focused on that question as are we a builder of robots or a user of robots. And I think we're not doing enough. I think we're standing still. We're losing ground in that we want to design and build robots, right? So we should be creating industry that designs and builds robots. And as I think, as most of you know, over the last couple of decades, or maybe even longer, America's moved to a service economy rather than a manufacturing economy. The old jobs will never come back. We don't want them back, right? Because robots can do those jobs, right? So let's build the robots to do the jobs and create jobs for robots that'll raise it and bring the jobs back, but not to human beings. And I know it sounds weird, right? But if you think about where we're going, then we'll be the ones, let's create better robots then, as opposed to those. And our culture just stops us wanting to do that right now. And I don't think we've thought enough about what it means for long-term employment, long-term jobs, long-term everything. Education, hospital, healthcare. You know, and as I get older, I realize I'm going to need more and more robots to help me, right? And that's the way I got to think. Okay, I need more robots to help me as I get older. I'm sorry, I'm a right-hand side kind of person.
I was going to ask what you're most excited about in the industry right now, either advancements or specific technologies or just.
What I'm most excited about right now is that robotics, we were sort of talking about it there. It tends to be, stuff like this tends to come from military or federal sort of instigation. They're spending all this money to get it going, right? And typically it's, whether it's the NASA space race or it's the US Army or the US military or it's some sort of federal agency will pump a lot of money into this stuff to begin with because they can. And they'll fund university research. What I'm most excited about right now is all of this is coming out. It's coming out of the closet because the military is going to stop investing in the research on this stuff because it's all proven, right? So now it's companies like Google and Microsoft and GM and all of the United Healthcare, all of those guys are going to be saying, how can we leverage this technology that's proven now in the toughest environments we have, whether it's outer space or it's in wars or some of that, how can we leverage that? That's what's really exciting, is it's coming out time for robots.
We have time for one more question.
Oh, sorry, we didn't have this one?
That's all right.
Besides South Korea, what other countries are on board with developing robotics?
China? Hey, yeah, well, look out. Are we number one still? I know it's getting close, but it won't be long.
One time, my husband and I were in Norway last year, and we went to St. Olaf Hospital in Trondheim. And this little funny thing was going to the elevator. It wasn't a person. Norwegians are funny looking. It was food being delivered, you know, and yeah, from the kitchen, went up, knew which floor to go to or whatever, and then was going back with the dirty trays. And what a great way to do that. Yeah, Norway is far ahead of America.
I'm going to leave one final thing. I'm going to leave these back there too. This is a conference that we're part sponsor of. It's called Robotics Alley. It's happening next week, right in town here. It's a global conference. People coming in from all over the world to attend. It's all about robots. So we'll leave those.
Do you have a couple moments to stay after and talk to us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Alan Bignall, everybody.
Thank you.